Okay, I would like to apologize for a couple things. One is the fact that I think it would have been more helpful if I had gone through these notes from section 7-8. Don't really know why our Algebra 2 book chose to do the 7-8 notes after the 7-7 notes, because it would have been really helpful to you to have seen the radical functions, especially the square root function, in a little bit more detail before we start asking you all kinds of questions about domains and ranges. However, uh, and I will say this, the other thing I want to apologize for is the kind of the toughness of the questions in the 7-7 section, especially the radical ones. Some of those are a little bit difficult. For those of you doing the homework, 55 and 57, you can go ahead and skip those because I know most of you would anyway. Those are not ones, I didn't look closely enough, those are not ones that we uh, will be testing over. In fact, there's some tough radical equations in that 7-7 homework which we will not be going over, um, or we will not be testing over. So don't panic about those. We need to get some of the basics down and then understand how those work. So, for instance, if we were to graph the square root function of x, the positive square root function of x, we've talked about in class a little bit, but you should be able to plug in values like 0, 1, 4, 9. Obviously, these are all perfect squares and get these numbers. Most of the time, we will not be asking you to draw a detailed sketch. So as you notice throughout the rest of these graphs, okay, so to continue, we will not be asking you to graph this with a lot of precision points and tables and all that sort of stuff. But you can clearly see if I started to graph those points that I would identify the top half of a sideways looking parabola, which starts out right there at the origin. Okay? Now, the domain for this, obviously, 0 being the smallest x value, and then everything to the right of it would be in the domain. So we would say that x is greater than or equal to 0 for the domain, and the range is also the same because, as you notice from the graph, 0 is also the lowest y value, and then it gets higher and higher from there, and it will continue on up and up and up and up and up forever and ever and ever. So the range would be greater than or equal to 0. We don't necessarily have to make tables, so don't think that you always have to make a table of values. That is something that you can do, but a lot of times what I'm really looking for is that you have the correct starting point, and you know whether it's the top half or maybe the bottom half of a sideways parabola. So this one right here, x plus 2 on the inside causes a shift of left 2 units. So the smallest x value is negative 2, and then it gets bigger from there. But the range doesn't change because it has not been moved down, only to the left. All right? When you have something on the outside, that shifts exactly the way you think. You'll notice in the last one we had x plus 2 on the inside. We have to think a little bit backwards there when it's on the inside, just with absolute value or with the parabolas. But when it's on the outside, it means exactly what you think. This is up 3 units. So it takes the whole graph and moves it up 3 units. Now you'll notice the domain didn't change from the original one, right? Because it's still 0 and everything to the right, but the range has changed from 3 on up. So if we shift it right 2 units and down 1 unit, right 2, down 1, that's my starting point at 2, negative 1. And then it's the top half of that sideways parabola. So the domain would be x is greater than or equal to 2, because everything moved to the right 2, and the range greater than or equal to negative 1, because everything moved down 1 unit. What happens if there's a negative sign in front of the radical? Oh, that's the bottom half of the sideways parabola. So this has plus 2 on the inside, so that's left 2. This has up 3, so left 2 and up 3. But instead of drawing the top half of the parabola going up this way, you drew the bottom half of the parabola going down this way. The domain, yep, greater than or equal to -2 for the x's, but this time the range is less than or equal to 3. Less than or equal to 3. Now there's a whole other type of graph in this particular section, and that has to deal with the cubic function. So we have y equals the cube root of x. And we can plug in values, but some of them are positive and some of them are negative. And we'll take cube roots of them and find 1s and -1s, 2s and -2s. When you graph it, you get a shape that looks like this. Starts at the origin. Looks kind of like the top half of a sideways parabola. But the bottom half goes in the opposite direction. Like I said, we will try to ask you for a sketch of these graphs, not the exact one, but maybe a sketch. Now you'll notice that this goes on forever and ever and ever and ever in the x direction, and forever and ever and ever and ever in the y direction. So it covers every single real number possible. So we want to say all real numbers for the domain and range. We have this R with a double bar. R with a double bar. That stands for all real numbers. So anytime that you think that it's all real numbers, it's okay if you decide to write that symbol. If you don't remember the symbol, you can always just write the word all real. Words. We also do not need to worry so much about the exact points. I know we made a table in that first one, but we don't have to worry about the exact points. This shifts to the right 1 unit. So I pick up that starting point and I move it over here 1 unit to the right. And then you have part of it going up this way and part of it going down this way. Still, domain and range all reals. It's really important that you find that center location. So this one, left 2, down 1. Left 2, down 1. So, left 2, down 1. Find that spot. Sketch the graph. Well, what happens if you put a negative in front of this one? Keep in mind, everything is flipping. This part that was up here is now down here, and the part that was down here is now up here. So everything just kind of flipped. But we still have to find that middle value to start with. So we find -2 or left 2, down 1. So left 2, down 1. But instead of going this direction, we follow the other direction. It's all to deal with that -1 that's sitting in front of the whole radical. But the domain and range has still not changed. Those are the notes for section 7-8. I know that those probably would have been a little bit more helpful to you had we done those before we got to some of the difficult questions in 7-7. We'll keep working on those in class as well until we get the hang of it. I know it's kind of tough.